Hey everyone, I'm happy to see you all here. Doom Guy, Corvo, glad you could make it. Call of Duty Russian Soldier _A, good to see ya. Gordon, Ivy from Deadlock. Scout, you aren't. We invited Soldier, not.
Oh yeah, I'm the best.
Anyway, so you all read the invitation. We're here to honor our shared grandfather Quake and bestow the award of Most Influential Shooter. All right, Patrick, you can wheel him out now. Here you are, and I understand you have a few words to share about your award. Guess, I'll explain then. When we talk about influential shooters or FPS games, there are of course a plethora of examples to point towards. However, Quake, without a doubt, tops all of them, and probably has some influence in some way to whatever other example you may provide. There are 4 main reasons why Quake is the recipient of this award, 4 reasons why it's so influential: the technology, the gameplay, the art direction, and the community. Let us start with the technology. Okay, so it's the 1990s. You have a group of game dev nerds under the banner of id Software. They release Wolfenstein in 1992 and it revolutionizes gaming. Then they release Doom 1993, revolutionizes gaming. Doom 2 1994, revolutionizes gaming. Tiles of the Dragon, you guessed it. No one remembers this game. The point is, by the mid-90s, id Software is on fire. Look at these games. This was the early 90s. No one was doing this. Carmack and the rest of id are beasts of programmers and game designers, and immediately after Doom 2, they started work on the most important game engine ever. Now, game engines, which are what video games are built off of, are free, plentiful, and very in-depth nowadays. You can make a proprietary engine, but you don't need to. Personally, I use Unity. I don't love Unity, but I hate all the other ones more, so. Real-time 3D rendering is commonplace, and the computers we have to run them are far more powerful and up to the task. 1994, not the case, and id Software had to create and optimize their own true 3D engine from scratch on 1994 hardware. That is very impressive, but that's not all. Now, there's a lot of legal and technical gobbledygook that I'm skipping over for the sake of the pacing of the video, and we're also ignoring the time frame of events, but just know that id Software, after developing and expanding upon one of the first true 3D engines, and by far the best at the time, released it under a public license so that others could use and develop it further. This decision was gaming's leap for mankind moment. Only thanks to the Quake engine, we got Gold Source and Valve. Now you have Half-Life, now Half-Life 2, and also every single other Valve game from Source and Source 2, and also all the influence on every video game genre coming out of Valve. You're welcome. I'll talk about Quake modding later, but for now, don't forget about every single Source mod and derivative of the Source engine. Now you got Titanfall and Apex Legends. You're welcome. Alright, let's roll it back. Building off the Quake engine, now we got all following Quake games, influential in their own rights. Quake 2, first game to have grenades, the grapple hook, more modding, amazing multiplayer. I haven't even gotten to Quake 1 multiplayer or mods. We'll get there, I promise. Quake 3, multiplayer only. These games all had profound impact on multiplayer shooters. Speaking of that, let's roll it back again. Call of Duty, bam. Now you have arguably one of the most popular first-person shooter franchises in all of gaming. Yeah, all of them from Quake. You're welcome. Dishonored, the best stealth games of all time. You're welcome. The new Doom and Wolfenstein games too, which is ironic since the original versions of these games came before Quake. Goes to show you just how groundbreaking and important this engine was. And I'm still leaving out dozens of franchises and games. Everyone, this is the part of the family reunion where Grandpa says, "None of you bitches would be here without me." And yes, little of the original engine is in these new derivatives. But the point isn't that all these games run on code from the mid-90s, it's that they're all built off code from the mid-90s, and that's pretty damn cool. And if the most influential engine ever wasn't enough, a few months after releasing Quake, it updated the game's multiplayer with client-server architecture, the first FPS to have it. No more dial-up or local multiplayer. Next time you boot up a multiplayer game with servers, so literally any multiplayer game, I want you to think of Quake in 1996. From a purely technological standpoint, Quake is and will always be the most influential shooter, from the birth of modern multiplayer shooters to the endless derivatives of its engine. And all the influence that these games had on the gaming landscape from their own gameplay is really all thanks to Quake, as they wouldn't have even existed without it. And that's not even mentioning the gameplay of Quake, which, now that I do mention it, The reason we're discussing gameplay after technology is because a lot of what made the gameplay of Quake so innovative, groundbreaking, and memorable is thanks to the technology. Other true 3D games existed before Quake, but there is nothing like Quake, nothing as complex. Okay, so look at this guy playing id Software's previous games. Do you notice something about him? Yeah, that's right, he's only using a keyboard. You were only looking left and right. And then Quake comes along and just watch how this guy reacts.
Holy shit, I can look up and down? What the hey? What is this magic?
True 3D first-person shooter action like nothing you've seen before. It's honestly fair to say that this game invented this style of game. You know, the genre that's probably your favorite because I know my demographics. Thanks to Quake. First-person shooters could be set back a decade or more if Quake never existed. And boy, did Quake use this new look freedom creatively. Before you call me a stinky noob, I did beat this game on Nightmare difficulty. Didn't even break a sweat, really. Only 2 separate Logitech mice.
It's actually not that hard if you've been playing shooters your entire life.
Player control in this game was like nothing seen before it, and I cannot stress enough that it does still hold up as its own fun game. You already know about the modern style of the aiming and shooting, but you have not heard yet of the
movement in this game is nuts. I can hop around like a bunny. Oh my goodness, I can shoot the ground with a rocket launcher to propel myself up. That makes so much sense in like the dumbest way possible.
Now, these smooth and innovative controls lended themselves well to both the game's forward-thinking multiplayer mode and single-player campaign. The movement is versatile. You're given the freedom to be aggressive, but you don't need to be. And depending on the situation, one can be preferred, but it's still up to you. Modern games can, and still are, learning from this. Level design is extremely unique, making use of the eccentricity of the setting to create interesting layouts, arenas, and traps. And it's constantly rewarding you for exploration. All with the newfound freedom of looking up and down along with the versatile movement. The enemies all have distinctive AI that's fun to fight. There's interesting counterplay depending on your approach because of the controls. You can inch forward using corner cover or dodge the incoming arcing projectiles and leaping attacks. You can utilize the environment and get to cover from accurate lasers, or you can run up and force a melee animation. And you're always making snap decisions prioritizing enemies in new arenas. There are several punchy and satisfying weapons to use, and the game forces you to utilize all of them, even if some are direct upgrades, with its enemy AI and level design. There are 4 episodes to Quake, owing to the fact that the game had 4 level designers, so each designer got an episode, which split up the gameplay as each designer had a distinct style. Now you may have noticed the weapons, layouts, and enemy designs are all very freakish and very incongruent with each other. The setting of this game is used as a justification for the incongruity, obviously because they had no idea how to fit together and decorate such nonsensical level layouts, enemies, and weapons. And in turn, their combination creates a unique atmosphere. Yeah, you guessed it. This is a segue into the Lovecraftian is the most fitting word for this game's aesthetics. So I've watched interviews, talks, read books and articles by these guys, and from what I can gather, these nerds took inspiration from whatever they thought was cool. Movies they liked, D&D campaigns with the demons, or a character named Quake, they just made games about what they thought was cool. No amount of praise is enough for the art direction of this game, the visuals of the environment, enemies, and the ambient horror music. It's difficult to describe the aesthetics of this game because it draws influence from so many contrasting genres like dark fantasy, eldritch horror, and science fiction. Just look at the background footage with the context that the main antagonist and mother of all the monsters you face is one of the outer gods from the Cthulhu mythos. The tone of this game can best be described as an unnatural bar fight between your very drunken self and an eldritch god who is also very drunk. It's all creepy and unnatural, things are weird and unsettling, but it's still an action horror game, like you're still fighting and shooting.
Patrick, that's a gun.
Yes.
Now, just to point out all my biases, I love ambient music. I like Trent Reznor and 9 Inch Nails, who did the soundtrack. I'm both religious and have a fascination with the occult. I also, predictably, love first-person shooters and action in general. The aesthetics and tone of this game feel like they were made for me, so I want it to be known now that if you are the type of person who already likes this stuff, you'll love this. But if you aren't, then even though it's well done, you'll probably see it as nothing more than an excuse for video game-isms of the mid-90s, which I mean, yeah. And yeah, has definitely influenced the art direction of future games. However, as much as I personally love the art direction, it undeniably didn't have as big of an impact as the community. In many ways, the community, or rather how the community was encouraged by id Software, was the most influential element of Quake. I very briefly mentioned the multiplayer during the gameplay section. That wasn't an oversight, I just wanted to talk more about it here. Because of the new technology, the game felt nearly as responsive in multiplayer as in single player, and this was huge for the time. There were more players in the servers, more technology and gameplay points there, by the way. This game not only popularized arena shooters, but was also so fun, accessible, and popular that it kickstarted PvP FPS as we know it. Competitive gaming is a child of Quake. Esports is a child of Quake. FPS tournaments on a grand scale are children of Quake. The multiplayer of this game was ahead of its time in 1996, but feels dated now that arena shooters have officially lost the genre war to slower paced games. I mean, I know my audience, so you guys might like them. I would seriously recommend Quake Champions. It is both free and the latest Quake game, and it's the best mix of accessible and fun that arena shooters can offer in the current year. But this video isn't about why arena shooters lost the genre war. It's about Quake and about modding, because modding is synonymous with Quake. Quake mods, holy shit.
Wait a sec, I thought I was just buying Quake. Why do I have like a million other games now?
Although it is obvious, I still want to emphasize that 20 years ago you couldn't just boot up Unity Personal Edition and have a game engine ready to go, and the impact Quake modding alone had on developers, players, and the FPS genre in general could be its own video. So many modern multiplayer ideas, mechanics, and game modes all came from Quake mods because they were the first of their kind. More team-oriented mods like Team Fortress were coming out of Quake modders. It's amazing looking back how forward-thinking some of these mods were with their core gameplay, because when anyone can make a mod, a good idea will go a long way. Some of these mods got picked up by other game companies years later to become fully fleshed out franchises, and the gameplay influence of these mods on other games also shouldn't be ignored.
Check this out, babe. I saw this in a speedrun video once.
Oh, did you see that? Speedrunning transition. Like Doom, you could save demo files in Quake, so you didn't need to bloat early internet with the big video files. The end screen for each level showed your time. The movement, like mentioned earlier, was satisfying and deep. This game was, and still is, perfect for speedrunning. But in its time, it was clearly telegraphing modern speedrunning to players. And shit, I have a friend that still occasionally speedruns this game. Carl Jobs released a video about Quake speedrunning like a couple months ago. If the endurance of the speedrunning community isn't a testament to how this game was perfect for this type of competition, I don't know what is. Machinima, transition, early in-game videos. By now, you get the point. The Quake community was impressive. They were given tools to express that creativity. Storytelling, humor, modding, mapping, speedrunning, competitive gaming, and esports. If anything, this approach to community is what best defines the legacy of Quake, which is why I saved it for last. The original Doom games get a lot of spotlight from the gaming community, and although I've played them, they're great, they were revolutionary, and they were far more financially successful than Quake. To me, they're just the games that popularized the concept of FPS games in the public conscience, and set up id Software to create the true most influential shooter of all time. Well, that about does it. This is the end. I've said my piece, I skipped a lot of history, and for the sake of pacing, glossed over important elements to this game like its mapping and modding scene, which were massive in scope, but I think I was able to get the picture across to you. Quake is the most influential shooter to ever be made, and I'm giving it a 9 out of 10, so here's your award, and you can wheel them out now, Patrick.